Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday. Hey, Nix. How's everyone doing? Here we are. Again. All right, let me pick what our next radio station is going to be here. Nix, you're finally able to work on your microphone project? Yeah, I saw. You were posting on it in the Discord. It looks super cool. The fact that you're making one from scratch is pretty incredible. You've been sick for 2 days? Sorry to hear about that. Hope you're doing better. Hey, Rhiannon Journey. How's it going? All right, so we did everything. Look at this, the page. Desktop companion. Rokapa and Rokapa's Idle Island. We were talking about this earlier. It's kind of interesting. I didn't realize... Oh, hey. Thanks, Rhiannon Journey. Resubscribed with the Prime for 6 months on a 6-month streak. Thank you so much. No, I think the microphone's awesome. But anyway, this is hilarious. Check this out. So we were looking at this. I love that Obsidian has its own web browser. But we were looking at this. This is like Rokapa's little idle island where it's just them. I don't think I can embigorize it. I don't even think I can scroll in. But yeah, it's this cute idea of this little frog who takes turns like cutting grass and like napping and stuff. And that's all. And all you can do is like, I think, change the colors of things and like upgrade some stuff. It's super cute. What I didn't realize was that they're also It's just part of another game. Like they're actually making a game version of this, which is adorable and super smart. So I was looking at that and I was thinking about how we could do something similar. We've talked about it before a little bit, but I think it's a good idea. I mean, this little idle thing, they sell it for like $3.99. They get some interest. I think we could do something fun like that with a little like idle like cargo ship that just kind of flies around, and you just kind of sits in the corner of your desktop, flying around, picking up cargo, dropping off cargo. I think that'd be really cute. So I want to look more into that, but that's what that is. We need to do this part first. We need to do the shipboard simulation. Rihanna Journey, you've taken like a total of $30 from Jeff Bezos and redistributed it to your favorite indie dev. Thank you so much. The world is becoming more fair. It's a great idea, actually. Yeah, it's super cool. The Ropica. I didn't know that they're making a regular game version of it. I thought it was just a little idle game, but it's a super great way to leverage what they've already got. Oh, the 6-month gold badge looks good on you, Rhiannon. Nix, if you could import in or load in your current game save or end game save and then show that as your ship, that'd be cool. I think that'd be too much. I think it would get too big. Like the ships that you're actually going to be playing are much bigger than the ships that I'm thinking of for this little idle companion thing. I think for the little idle companion thing, it would be like a very small ship with like maybe 1 crew member, maybe 2. And it would be like a short cargo haul flights. So there would be like a little cargo bay, there'd be like a little living area maybe, or maybe it would just be a cockpit and a cargo bay and like some connective tissue. And maybe the way I thought about it is maybe the pilot falls asleep during the to kind of lean on what Ropuka, I literally can't ever pronounce their name correctly. Rokupa. To imitate what they're doing, where the frog is like asleep and then he's like cutting grass and then he's like asleep. I thought it'd be funny if the pilot's like asleep and then they get somewhere and the pilot wakes up and has to like move some cargo around, and then they take off again and the pilot's back asleep again. I don't know, something cute like that I think would be fun. Maybe something breaks every once in a while and they wake up and they have to like open up a panel or use something. I think it'd be fun. You can't wait for your gold logo? You're on your way. You're on your way, Nix. If you could zoom out and then just see it fly around and stuff. Make it so the camera pans around the different levels of the ship. Yeah, we'll see. I don't want it to be like, it's got to be a desktop companion. So it's got to take up like this much of the screen, right? Like just a little corner of the screen. So we'll see. I think it'll be fun. But yeah, we have to do the shipboard simulation first before we can think about that. But I think if there's like an idle game jam or something, let's say you use pre-existing assets, I think that would be a fun thing to do someday. But we have to finish the shipboard simulation first. Well, maybe not finish, but we need parts of this first. And to do that, we need to finish the tile block editor, which we are on our way. We are on our way. All right. So last week we finished all this stuff, which was great. We finished all the redoing of the API. The whole auto tiling, calling it an API is rich, but the whole auto tiling process. And then so we need to do 2 different things today. We need to do the raycast cursor input. I say today, we need to do this. This is what we're going to be working on this week. We're going to be working on the raycast cursor input and the resizable block buffer. We should probably auto tile invalid blocks, but we're going to do these. We're going to do the resizable block buffer because I need that. Well, I don't know if I need it to be resizable, I guess. But I need it to move. So I'm gonna call it that. You know, we want to do the raycast cursor input. So we're gonna move these into the in progress section. And now I'm gonna move some stuff around. I'm gonna move auto tile invalid blocks to the top. But hey, we're cooking. We're getting through this task list. These I don't think we're going to get to anytime soon. I think we're going to move on to the simulation before we hit these 4. So you can do these 3, and then these 4, and then I'm going to say we're done for now. We can circle back and do these later. All right, so what's involved in this? Could also just be the actual background. What will the resizable block buffer get you? Hey, shenanigans. You're going to go into lurk mode? No worries. Rhiannon, I will answer your question shortly. Snigget over on YouTube. Thank you. Is TileBlock Editor a plugin or built-in Obsidian? Oh, so the TileBlock Editor is a tool we're working on for this, our isometric 3D game. I am using Obsidian, good eye, but this is just like a little Kanban board I knocked together, like a fake Kanban board that we're just using. So the TileBlock Editor is this thing. It's a tool that we run. It's a runtime tool that lets us build block compositions, I guess would be the nicest way to put it. So we can like lay down a floor. We can fill this up. It's a combination of this editor tool along with this auto tiler and this cutaway system that lets us build and parse this like 3D data in a way that's ultimately rendered using isometric 2D. I went too far. There we go. So we make a bunch of rooms. Make some dividers. So it's this process that lets us build this stuff out. We can put some doors in. But how are you doing? Welcome in. So it's this kind of system that lets us designate this 3D space or I don't know, partition 3D space and then still render it in our little 2D isometric thing. Be able to reason about it. So what we're gonna do, so what I want to do is I want to change the way the input handler works. So right now, essentially we define the Z index that we're operating on. So we're on this bottommost Z index. And this is where the mouse cursor is being mapped onto. It's essentially just mapping it directly onto the tile map layer at this point. If I scroll up, it'll remap to the next level up. And if I scroll up, it'll remap to the next level up, etc., etc. I want to change the way this works. So now we're mapping only to the top layer. So if you notice, as I mouse around here, it registers the mouse at the top layer. But what it doesn't do is if I'm mousing over here, it's not registering it to the side. So what I want to do is I want to switch this to use kind of a fake raycast. So I essentially want to cast from the mouse cursor on the screen, where it is on the screen. I want to like cast it through the world so that the first thing it does is it hits like whatever wall is underneath the cursor here. And then when you scroll in, it just increases the like penetration depth of the raycast, right? Or what it probably is going to do is what we'll probably do is we'll cast a ray from the mouse cursor all the way through and generate like an array of like, here are all the hits, like the way you'd have a list of collisions for like a raycast, like a list of hits. And then when you scroll, all that does is it moves you through that list. So it's like if you'd hit this wall first, then you scroll through, and now you're like hitting this floor. And you scroll through again, maybe now you're hitting this floor. And that way we're not doing this like hard, you are locked into this given Z level. And I think that's like the last big input change I want to make. But it's a big one, so I want to do it now. I want to do it before we get too far along here. It'll also do cool stuff where like right now it's able to figure out what block you're able to hit only by the ground. So it has a hard time telling if you're hitting a wall unless you're cursoring over where that wall's floor piece is, where it meets the floor. Whereas doing it this way, we could say, okay, you're here. Is there a wall here? So right now we're not selecting this wall. We have to like drop down to select the wall. But using this other system, even if you're up here, you could tell that you're at the wall, right? That's the idea. Obviously, this is kind of complicated. And some stuff has to change in the meantime for us to be able to do this, which is kind of takes us back to Rhiannon's question of like, why are we resizing
Maximum warp
block buffers? Maximum warp node Jewel has it gone. We want to do that because right now we basically have one big static block buffer, which is the whole buildable space. It's pretty big, but it's just the whole buildable space. And so what you need to think about. Are you doing this full time? Sick editor, by the way. Thank you. I'm not doing it full time. We work on it on stream a few hours a day, 5 days a week. I work on it a little bit off stream, not lately because I do have a day job. I have a day job, so I work on this in between that. So we're probably only working on this 15. Best case scenario, 20 hours a week, usually less. Realistically, we're probably working on this 10 to 15 hours a week. But yeah, we've been building this editor up slowly over time. This is kind of the baseline tool that we're going to use to build out the game space. So, okay, back to what I was saying. Think of the case where there are no blocks. Let me just restart. So think about the case where nothing has been placed yet. This case. Well, this case is intelligible because we're only mapping it to a specific layer. So right now this is just mapped, hard mapped to the top layer. But it doesn't really matter and you don't really notice because there's nothing else here, right? So there's no... It's not relative to anything else. So what we need to do is we need to basically... We need to reposition the block buffer so that this just becomes like the origin of the block buffer. Wherever this is like... This becomes the origin. This becomes 0. So we don't need to do the resizable block buffer thing right now, but I do want it to be the case because I'm thinking about the case like, what if you build something, then erase it? Like, what if you do this? What if you build something out to here, and then you erase this part of it, and then you build it again out to here, and then you erase this part of it, and then you build this thing up to here. Yeah, now we've hit the edge of the thing. So I want it's not so much that I need the block buffers to be resizable right now as I need them to be movable. And if we're gonna make them dynamic, like they can move, we might as well make them resizable. Which is something I want anyway, because when we're done with the edit mode, when we leave build mode, we don't want to save. Like, let's say the maximum buildable area is huge, right? It's like this huge thing right now. Oh, and I crashed because I went too far. Which shouldn't happen, and yet it did. So that's curious. There was a problem with the int16 conversion. Oh, we probably... Wait, how did we overflow the int16? I should have probably paid attention to what that was, but I don't want to deal with that right now. So we're not going to. But yeah, so we need to be able to compress it down so that the block buffer is only the size of what we actually need it to be. So we just need to do that anyway. So I figured we might as well do it all at the same time. Yeah, that's a bug for another day. Yeah. I don't know what would have caused that. It's not possible that the position coordinate exceeded the number that you can represent with an int16. So kind of curious. It's possible a negative number. No, but a negative number is supported. Yeah, I don't know. It seems really unlikely that we exceeded the limit for an int16. int16 max value. int16 max value is 32,767. Yeah, we did not exceed that. So who knows? Makes a lot of sense about the block buffer. Yeah. The thing about the origin is the thing I really want to change about it. Just so that, because otherwise this like raycast thing doesn't make any sense. Like there's no way to do a raycast in an empty world and like know where you are unless you're like predefining how far the penetration of that ray goes, like how long the ray is. So it makes more sense to me where when the world is empty, you can move the cursor around as much as you want. The raycast thing doesn't matter if there's nothing to hit. That initial block will always just be at 0, 0, 0. And if you move the cursor around, that just means 0, 0, 0 is changing. So we're just rebasing it, essentially. So yeah, that's kind of what I want to do. This is a pretty huge change. So probably take us at least this whole week to do this, if not longer. But it's one of the last big changes. So that's exciting. So what we need to do is we need to think about all the steps in the input process, beginning with the input handler, which is over in Godot as an action map thing. Or it's not an action map thing, but it's tied into the input handler that we have over here. That's an auto load. That's what it is. So we've got this auto load. I honestly don't remember how we do the... I think the board is responsible for this part. So camera 2D, get screen center position. So we can get the screen's center position, then we can get the offset. We could also get the mouse coordinates in world space, in 2D world space. And then we need to do a ray. I'm going to actually look to see what kind of stuff we've got going on in the Godot to help us with this part. Because the problem is I end up writing my own stuff, and then there ends up being some built-in thing, which is just like perfect. Raycast 2D. We just need to get started, though, is the thing. We actually probably don't want to raycast 2D because we're not casting through 2D. We're taking a 2D point and then raycasting 3D through our virtual world here. So we're probably not going to be able to use any of the raycast nodes because we're not actually raycasting in world space. But I'm still curious to see how this stuff works. I've done this a little bit. So what we're actually probably going to end up doing, just hide the docs for later. You did a git commit? What, you mean before we change everything? Yeah. My git commit process sucks. I basically do a commit every stream. So I know what changed stream to stream, but I don't have much more granularity than that. That's something we'll have to change, but I'm not going to change that until probably we start to hit like published versions of the game, like versions, versions that are live and that can be played and stuff. And I'm more concerned about what I push into production. Yeah, so what I think we're going to do, so here's how our initial system works here. I'm going to make this bigger so we can just read it. So the way this works right now, cursor chords, vector 3i, map. So we do this thing, this is my own function, map global to level coordinates. So it takes the global coordinates and then figures out where those coordinates are on a given tile map layer, which represents an individual level, like a Z level. So we got the global mouse position. That's pretty much, get global mouse position is really all we need to do to get started. And then we just start advancing the thing. The thing is, we're not in... The trick here is that we're in this kind of dimetric perspective, so we need to advance the vector forward. We need to figure out the vector forward, which shouldn't be that hard. And then we are going to advance it. But the trick, some of the tricks is going to be the stuff I described earlier, like detecting walls, like being able to, like, you might pass through a tile, but you need to check to see if there's a wall, like, nearby, because you might hit the top of the wall. And I don't want to do this with, like, actual collision stuff. I don't want to, like, give every tile, like, a collision thing. Like, I don't want to worry about it that way. I think we're going to do it a lot. I think we're going to still do it pretty simply, but it's going to involve checking, like, a range of tiles on a given layer and then moving on to the next layer. So the main thing that needs to change here is this cursor coords. Actually, no, the cursor coords is... No, yeah, the cursor coords thing is wrong, because the cursor coords thing is mapping us onto... If we go to this function, we take the local coords, so we take the global coords from the mouse, we get it into local space for a given unmoving tile map layer at the index that we've preset, because that's what the scroll wheel does right now. All it does is it just sets a specific z-index level. I shouldn't say z-index, I should just say z-level. And then we get that into a specific layer by taking that from local into the tile map space. So it gives us a specific tile map. What's the easiest way to do this? In my mind, the easiest way to do this is we repeat this process for every tile map layer, right? And not only do we repeat this process for every tile map layer, but then we scan in a certain range. Let's see what that range would be. So if we grab this, so let's look briefly just to see what might affect us. Let me grab some floor pieces here. So let's make a little grid of floor pieces. Just here, because it doesn't matter. So we're going to make a grid. I think it's going to be a 4x4 or maybe a 3x3. This is just for illustrating the wall problem. This is kind of maybe the lazier way to do it, but this is definitely easier than, like, faking a raycast. So this is going to kind of be, hopefully this will be pretty illustrative of our problem here. I don't know why I'm doing it like this. Hope everyone's doing all right. Hope everyone had a great weekend. All right, so here's the spot, all right? Let's call this, let's say this is like where the cursor is. This one back here. So this is where we mapped the cursor to. We can't just check that, right? We need to check in front of it. And we don't need to consider out here, but we do need to consider some other spots. So if we look here, this is going to be tough because this is going to get more complicated the more complex the shapes. But that's fine. We can refine this later. So, you know, we got to check to see if a wall is in the way. So if a wall is here, we might accidentally hit this wall, right? instead of that floor panel. If this highlighted floor panel behind it is where the mouse cursor is, who's to say we aren't hitting this, right? So this is what we need to figure out. So it's not just enough to know what map we're hitting with the cursor. We also need to know where within the tile the point is, right? Which is fine. We might just also need to pass. We might also need to communicate the local position of the cursor so that we can tell whether, for one thing, we're on the right or the left side. And so does this actually need to check this? Can we? No. So this one cannot. So we need to check up to. So we'll need to check all of these here. So you can see that's a problem. So here are the ones. I'm going to color these a slightly brighter color. Yeah. So these are going to be the ones we need to also check. Right. So if this is the origin, so if this is where the cursor's hitting, then we also need to check these ones. Because these might actually be... Like, this one obviously takes priority. So if we look at it, it's like... 1... That's a terrible 2. How are you supposed to write a 2 that small? Two. That's almost unreadable, but it works for us. Three. So this is just priority. I'm just thinking about priority. Make the 2s better. Here's what we're gonna do. We'll write them in this color so we can actually... So that's highest priority. Second highest priority. Third highest priority. I don't know how to do it. I wanted to do a fancy 4. I'm not going to be able to do that. Fourth highest priority. Arnio, you sure about the 2s? You sure about the 2s? If you understood correctly, the wall wouldn't overlap the cursor tile in 2s. So this is where the cursor is. If you map it strictly to a floor tile, it's back here. If you put a wall here, put a wall in 2, that's a lower priority than 1, but a higher priority than 3. Right? I don't need to diagram this out. It's just busy work like that helps me think about stuff. So obviously your cursor won't hit both 2s. It's just like, which half of the tile are you on? No worries. How are you doing, Arnio? Oh, got someone I can ban. That's exciting. All right. Ready, aim, blast them. You got banned. Not you, Arnio.
He's dead, Jim.
He is dead. Five. Oh, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do a nice number 6 here. There we go. So this should be fine. This is like a very cheap way to do this. Is to basically, all we need to do is figure out which side. We don't even need much more information than whether the cursor is on the left half or the right half. It's pretty much all we need to know. Cursor on the left half, well then it'll defer to the left hand, which doesn't really matter. The center is always higher priority than either one that's on the side. So we just need to check 9 positions. And if we find a wall at one of these positions, then we're good. And then we need to repeat this check across multiple layers. And what we probably want to do is build a list of all of the points. The real question is, where do we want to do this? So if we're going to take advantage of the tile map layers to help us figure this out, we need to do this in the Godot. Early in the frame, we need to do this when we're still on the Godot side. So we need to do that like here. When we're in one of the input handlers, or technically we're in the board, which is, the board is like the piece that all physical 2D game pieces sit in. They sit on the board. So the board is responsible for all of that navigating. And then each of these, well, these don't matter, but let's say we take like the elastic layers. So each of these have, right now we support 8 levels. Each of those levels support a bunch of these. So we actually want something like the static levels. Yeah, the static levels here don't move. I don't know why I've set them up to be grid levels. They should be something special. Your brain, Arnio, your brain is soup from trying to make the radar blips match the contacts in your space game HUD. Oh yeah, that was so cool. That was so cool. I remember seeing that on the Discord as well. I'm just looking at it. Super cool. I like having an actual physical radar burst. The only cooler thing is if you could do the sweep, because you're doing like an expanding and contracting like burst. What I want to see is, I know it's like silly, but I want to see the clockwise sweep. There we go. That would be too much work. But yeah, matching up the blips with the HUD, that seems difficult. That definitely seems difficult. All right, so sonar is cooler, but this was easier. Yeah. All right, Diginanigans. Are you keeping the cursor tied to the current floor, or does your checking need to include blocks on the floor above 2? You guess the tearaway system should theoretically make that impossible to happen anyways. So what we need to do, Diginanigans, I think, is we need to sample all floors. So we need to figure out the overlap for all floors. Or we can at least just send an array. Actually, it doesn't need to be an array. We could still just send a single coordinate, which is where are you mapped to like the top? Let's say 0. We just need to map it to level 0, the topmost layer. And then we can figure out where it maps to all the lower layers. So actually we can do most of this checking in the simulation, so that's good. So I think the first thing to do is to change it so that we map it onto the tile map on the top layer. And then we do the little check I described here. But then we need to do this check on every level. Technically, we could do it at the top level. We need to remember, quote unquote, what the I do think we need to build. We either need to build an array of all of the contacts so that we can sort them by depth or whatever. I think that's the only way we can do it, because then when you swing the scroll wheel, it should just move you to the next thing in that array. So it's like if we're on this floor and it's like you see a wall on this floor and then you, bam, go to the next. Actually, it might not go to the next layer, right? So if there's a wall in position 1, then it would give you back position 1. But if you scroll forward, it should go to the next point, which would be X, floor X. So it might not necessarily jump from floor to floor. It might just jump from tile to tile. Because, like, let's say for argument, there's a wall on each position 1, 3, 5, and X. So then as you're scrolling forward, it's going through the walls on each of those positions or whatever. Because that's where you hit next. But yeah, then you also need to think about the tearaway system. So or cutaway system. Because the cutaway system would invalidate certain options, right? Like if a wall is being cut away, you're not going to select it. But we can either build the list first and then invalidate parts of it using the cutaway system, or we can refer to the cutaway system as we're building the list, which is probably what we should do. Yeah, I think I like that. I should probably move this to like a new file. How big should this be? $128. Okay. Well, how are you doing, Diginanigans? And we'll copy these over so we have these. Save this in here. I don't know what I'm going to call this. Tile. Cursor, tile priority. I don't know. This is like our priority list. Yeah, right now it's simple enough to say, is there a wall here? Okay, well that might take priority off of the floor panel. What we do need to do, okay, here's the first thing that's easy, and this is exploratory. We need to also start passing along the local coordinate. Like, we need to know where within the tile the cursor is. So I'm curious about that. So can I say something like... I kind of want to just see what this is like. So let's say print... I probably should do this in the function. Well, I probably shouldn't. So we generate the local coordinate, which is just where is this coordinate in local space for this given. So instead of static layers level index, we're going to start doing this just using a single input layer. I'll probably hard code an input layer that may or may not follow the camera. I'm tempted to do it in a way where it follows the camera so that there's like quote unquote input space that we can then just figure out based on the camera's position. But no, that won't work because the tile maps don't move with the camera. They still need to be locked to like some kind of grid, right? Is it obvious that I don't plan these changes out in advance? I just go live and we figure it out as we go. I always mean to do some research, and then I just don't. So if I take the local position and then I subtract the map position, I'll get the offset, right? So we actually need multiple things out of this. Let's add a function. So let's say func map global to local chords. Let's just do it like this. Just for now, just so I can see these as distinct steps. 2i. We can say return vector 2i static layers all here. Let's declare it instead of returning it directly, just so we can debug it. Which is kind of why I'm splitting these for now. It's just so I can see them as separate things. Or so I can return them as separate things, I guess, is what I mean. Without having to call it again. Let's say global chords. And then we're just going to return local chords.
I don't know what y'all think, but I think that's pretty.
And then here, this will take local chords. Okay, the problem is we do call this function a lot, I think. Where do we call this function? Oh, just twice? Okay. So we say this map global to level. We need to say map global to local chords.
You guys are so good at that.
That's pretty gross, but we're going to do it for now. So we're going to say variable local chords vector 2 map global to local chords. We're just doing a get global mouse position here. This is eventually going to be like its own separate cursor thing that's not dependent on that, but not yet. Not yet. We just pass in the low local chords here. And then what I want to do is I want to see what is local chords minus cursor chords. Not great. Print vector 2 local chords dot x minus cursor chords dot x local chords dot y minus cursor chords dot y. I don't want to just see what this does. I think I understand how this works. Building.net. Okay, that doesn't quite work the way I expected it to. Oh, because it's... Is it the other way around? I'm just seeing the shape of the data that we get back here. I don't even know where the origin is. It says 200. Where's like the origin? Or up here somewhere. There it is. Somewhere around here's the origin. So this is the local chords. This is just in pixel space, is what this is, right? I mean, it's in the tile map space, is what I mean. And when we get the cursor chords... Oh, so I need to divide that by... Or I need to do a number of things. I need to divide it by the size of the tile. So is it local chords X divided by 32? Divided by 8. Almost, not quite. Hey, Alon. Alon. Wait, are we seeing coding? Yeah, we're messing around with some stuff. We're working on a block editor tool for building out these spaces. Oh, man. Wait, why are you starting from there? That's a mistake. Oh, there's something weird going on now. But yeah, it's this tool that I've got. We're messing around with the inputs, which is causing conflict here. How did I mess around with that? How did I mess that up so much? How are you done? We're working on an isometric 3D take on like FTL Faster Than Light. So we're working on a little 3D space game. We're working on what's going to be a pretty fundamental change to the way the inputs work. So that's why we're in kind of a bit of a tattered state here. So what did I do? After 2, local chords, global map, blah, 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 blah. So this shouldn't be different. None of this should have changed. Static layers, level index, dot local to map, local chords. You pass the local chord in as a parameter for the layer chords. Why does this seem to give us different behavior? Than it did when it was, you know, separate steps. Or when it was one step. Next, you broke something in the mic. As Windows realizes it's a mic, but it doesn't do sound at all. Oof. Well, changing this is probably a mistake here. I just don't see how. So forget about printing this for now. What did I do to break this? No, see, it seems to be working here. No, but as soon as I put the hammer down, it like drops to 0 for some reason. You know, there's probably someone else doing this work. All right, well, let's revert all of these changes just so we can understand what happened here. Problem we're working on this stream. We're working on, yeah, see, now we're back to normal. I don't know why. I don't know why that caused such a weird issue. We're working on a pretty major change to the input system, Nix. We're trying to fake, instead of hard coding the Z layer, so you can see my mouse cursor as I slide in here, I slide in under this weird roof to like access the room underneath it. I don't want that to be how this works. Because right now we basically hard code what Z level we're on by using the scroll wheel. So like we're mapped to this Z level and now I scroll down. Now we're mapped to this Z level. I kind of want it to be to fake like a raycast where it just maps to the top layer. And then it goes through and it looks, so like if we were here, it could tell that we were touching this wall, like a fake raycast would. Like it'll go through the scene and figure out where we're touching. That's kind of what we're working on. And a lot needs to change for that to happen. And there are going to be really interesting, not interesting, but there's going to be a lot of edge cases like, once you've locked in, once you like click down and you're starting to drag out, now your Z index is going to be locked, right? Until you start to scroll. I am not convinced that this system actually works in edit mode. I'm not convinced that it will actually be able to work this way in the edit mode of the game. Because there's a lot of questions about, well, how do you make 3D shapes? Like you click, drag, and then scroll down. If you're scrolling down through the layer, but there's nothing there for the raycast to hit, it needs to interpret that movement the way we're currently interpreting it, where it like slides down through layer by layer. So there's going to be a mixed, I think there's going to be kind of a mixed approach here. Yeah, we're already mapping it to the level we're on, Nix. That's how we're able to achieve this behavior. We lock in. And then when you scroll down, you get to the next layer. And then you scroll down when you get to the next layer. What we're describing is more complicated because if there's a wall here, so you'd hit the wall first, right? Not the floor behind it. If you were just mousing over this part here, it would look like you're selecting this, right? So we need to add comparisons within a given layer. That's where this starts to get complicated and where I think this is like going to be more of a play mode interface. So we might actually not be able to do this right now. Or more specifically, this might not be an appropriate input method for edit time. It just might not be. Because in edit mode, we're working with like empty spaces and we're filling them with stuff. So it might make more sense to have this hard-coded Z-layer stuff. And then when you're in play mode and you're not manipulating space anymore and you're just like interacting with what's already there, maybe that's when it's appropriate to do this mouse cursor stuff, this like fake raycasting thing. In which case, we need both of the systems to play together. Like we need to be able to interpret both. You could check for the camera Z depth. Wouldn't that be arbitrary? What's the camera Z depth? It's wherever I want it to be, right? Because it's a 2D camera. The camera only has a position in 2D space. We could do the same thing as we're describing with the cursor, where we could raycast from the center of the camera and see what we hit first. That's probably what we will do for things like camera rotation and stuff like that. For determining where the camera is rotating around, we probably will also use this system. I'm just wondering if it makes sense to do this now. I mean, I definitely want to figure it out, but yeah, it might not work right for, So how did I mess this up when I split it up? Too local. Why did just splitting this up into its own function? Oh. I get this as a 2i. Why do I get this as a 2i? Oh, you know what I want to do? I want to do local to map, and then I want to map back to local. So I want the local position of the mapped tile. And then I can get an offset. Aha, ha, 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 ha. Okay, that works. That's a good idea. Hey, Silas, how's it going? Nix, as the tiles behind the wall has a lower Z depth than the wall, you could check from which side of the wall the cursor goes onto the wall. If the Z depth is lower at the cursor when it hits the wall, then the wall should be selected. If it comes from behind the wall, I understand what you're... I don't really understand what you're suggesting, Nix, but it's okay. Like when you say the wall has a lower Z depth than the tile behind the wall has a lower Z depth than the wall. It has a higher Z depth. It's behind the wall. It's fine. I think we're using the same terms to describe different things, and it's probably going to make it hard to get onto the same page for this, but that's okay. Because you have to figure out when a cursor hits the wall. That's the other problem we're talking about. We're talking about a bunch of problems, but so here's a diagram of kind of maybe what you're describing. So this X tile, this is where the cursor is, right? It's on this back tile with an X. We have to check the tiles in front of it to see if any of those tiles have walls. So if there's like a tile here or a wall here, then instead of hitting this X tile in the back, we would hit this wall tile. Unless there was another wall tile here, in which case we would hit this one. In the case that there's two at equal depth, we need to figure out where within the tile the mouse is pointing. So that's how I have it figured out so far as distinguishing within a given layer. I think that'll work fine. No, it's okay. You can work on your microphone. Because while I appreciate the help, I want to make it super clear that we're not stuck, right? We're not stuck on this problem. We're just working through it. Close this without saving. You gave up on the mic for now? Aw. That's basically what you were talking about as well? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's how you do it. Because we don't have any actual collision stuff. Silas, the stuff you were showing in Discord is so cool. All the stuff with the atmospherics. I'm excited to think about how that works in my own game. Let me get this image up here. Like, this is super cool, right? This is like you've got like a flow field showing the way the oxygen moves. You've actually got the atmosphere. It looks like you have the different components of the atmosphere, like the oxygen and I assume nitrogen and CO2, O2, N2, and CO2. Super cool. And then you've said there's a door here basically, and it's like venting everything out into space. Super cool. You're actually doing like a lot of simulation. It's very sick. I wasn't going to do that much simulation. I was going to like mostly fake it. Yeah. Yeah, I want to read more about the thread you got going about all of the wind and stuff. I think it's going to be super cool. Because, yeah, I wasn't planning on tracking the composition of the atmosphere, really. Not like that. I was just going to be like, air versus vacuum. I was literally just going to do air and not air. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to... You're making me think I should simulate it more closely. Like, there's either atmosphere or no atmosphere. Not like in a binary sense, but like it was going to be just a float, like between vacuum and not vacuum. But yeah, you got a really nice hard sci-fi simulation thing going. Yeah, so this is how we're going to figure out within a given layer what we might be colliding with. This gets kind of complicated when you look at, like, I'm a little concerned about this approach because look at something like this. Something like this makes me question this approach because, like, this messes things up. Like, what if we have, let's just say for argument, we've got, like, this here. Here. I'm going to actually put this over here so we can use it because this is a good example. So like, what if we have like a wall here, and then we've got like this thing here. So like, it might look like you're touching this, but actually, here, I'm going to put it in an even better spot. Let's put it in front, like far in front. So you might think that you're touching this, but actually you're touching the wall behind it, right? And this is hard to do without just starting to use like collider stuff. So I don't know. I really want to do this kind of input, but there might be limits to like how complex it can be. It might have to be like, we can figure out what layer you're on, but then within a layer, it's gonna be simpler. Like, we might not be able to get it as complex as we would like, which is unfortunate, but it's definitely the thing that is giving me pause. Is having any kind of system like this that doesn't actually do any collision stuff, any collision checking, and doesn't know about the shape of the thing is going to be really hard to make work here. It's a conundrum. Silas, you're not sure if your ideas, if you've got a good idea with your big complex atmospheric simulation thing. You tend to get a little obsessed with those ideas. You like the with the complexity by itself creating pockets of emergent gameplay. I mean, that's how you get emergent gameplay, right? Is you have those interactive systems. So yeah, so maybe we're overdoing it a little bit. Maybe we just use the system simply enough to detect Z layer. Maybe it's simple like that. Shenanigans, you don't think it's worth worrying about the hitboxes of specific shapes? You have a clear indication of which tile you're highlighting, and you have mechanisms to select what you want. You think it's a bit of a nitpicky thing with diminishing returns compared to implementation complexity? Yeah. I don't know if you're talking about what I'm doing or what Silas is doing, but I think it applies to both. So how do I want to change the way we're taking inputs to handle this? Yeah, I at least want the first layer, which is if we've got like our block, right? I want at least the first layer of this. I don't know about the interiority stuff, but if I have this like 3D space, right? I want to at least be able to figure out where on this cube I'm touching. Like, it doesn't have to be, because right now all we can do is figure out where we are on the top, right? I would like to be able to do that so that I could select one of these wall pieces by just mousing over it. That would be cool, right? That by itself would be cool. Something more complicated than that, like being in here and like having your walls and stuff and like being able to tell that I'm touching this wall instead of the space behind the wall. Because right now it just thinks I'm touching the space behind the wall. So yeah, you're right. Even just an approximate guess would be right the vast majority of the time. We have kind of a defense against needing to do this too thoroughly because things like crew members and things like computer consoles or stuff like that, like stuff like these things, or our objects. So like a crew member or a door or a console like a wall console, which I actually don't have a scene for. Thought I did. But stuff like this, like crew members and doors and stuff, these have collision shapes. Well, they need to be better than that, but this crew member has a collision shape. So it'll be like if there's a crew member against the wall and you're trying to select the crew member, that'll be like super easy because there's like an actual collision thing happening. Nice. No save. So if I wanted to know about this stuff, so here's what we need to do. I still just want to focus for a second on reporting out some of this cursor information. I still want to see if I can make this substitution without breaking anything. Why didn't that work? Oh. The heck? Again, I somehow messed this up. There it is. So this needs to change to map local. Oh, we do this in a couple of places, huh? That's why we had a problem here. Okay. All right, so I'm splitting this into 2 steps so that I can get the local coordinates out separately. It's a jaunty tune here. All right. Well, I missed some of the uses of this function, so that might explain why we were having problems with it before. Let's see if that's been resolved. Okay. All right. It works this time. Cool. Oh, interesting. Okay. All right, so let's figure out if we can map the local coordinates now. Understand a little bit more about what's going on here. So what did I say? I needed to take the local coordinates. So we can say variable mapped coords vector 2i. And all we want to say is this. So I'm going to map the chords, and then what I want to do is I want to say below I'm going to say local to map, and I'm going to say map to local. So we're just going to take these. We're basically figuring out what mapped coordinate corresponds to our cursor's local coordinates. And then we are going to figure out what the local coordinates of that mapped coordinate is. And that should be what we need here. And then what we should be able to do and we subtract this one. Okay, then so what we're going to do is we're going to say print. What's Chrome telling me about? Rihanna Journey, you just saw that JetBrains is a platinum sponsor of Godot now. Oh, that's so cool. They've been really active in the PHP world also in terms of investment. Yeah, I like them going back to Unity. They were my preferred C# IDE. I'm definitely not fishing for a JetBrains sponsorship, you know. I am, though, if you're out there. All right, so what did I say? We're saying local chords minus map to local, and that should give us the offset within the coordinate, and that's something we're interested in. So this is like dead center. I guess there's no such thing as dead center really, which is an important thing to note. So we can, it's really hard to see, but you can see in the debugger that we're like kind of moving within. We can go up, and by up I mean down. Seems like as soon as we get to 4, we dip to the next. So it looks like it has a range of 3 to -3, which is a little strange. Okay, this is what we want. This gives us our little offset. And all we really need to know, we don't need to know much about the offset. We really only want to know if it's on the left side or the right side. So we don't actually care. All we really care about is the sign of, excuse me, the sign of X. So where is 0 is my question. It's unstable when you make huge moves, though. Seems to be the case. Yeah, so I don't think we want to depend on the actual number. We just want to depend on like whether we just need to know if we're on the left or the right side. And I think we can figure that out pretty easy. Unfortunately, it looks like the 0 is just to the left. It would have been really nice if 0 was on the right side, but that doesn't really matter. Because we can just say, is it greater than 0? If it's greater than 0, we're on the right side of the tile. If it's less than 0, we're on the left side of the tile. And that is all that matters. Although, it's going to change depending on what the camera rotation is doing. This is yet another thing that's camera rotation dependent, unfortunately. Although, no, yeah, it totally is. That's okay. It was cool to hear about Battlefield 6 using Godot for their editor. Yeah, that was really cool. I think it's kind of a funny choice. I mean, it sounds like really cool. Obviously, there were some probably very shrewd reasons why they did that. So cursor chords is like the tile. All right, so we can get this information. What do we want to do with it now? You know? So we know where within the tile we're mousing over. And that enables us to do this thing. So we can tell if we're on the left side, then we bias, then we check these 6, I guess. If we're on the right side, we check these 6. To figure out where we are, or what we might be mousing over. I really do want a way of selecting. I'm really excited. Honestly, selecting a wall is very exciting for me. Being able to tell which wall the cursor is on. Very cool. All right, so what we can't do, though, is we can't be hard coding. So the problem is we are mapped to a particular index. All right, so what we need to do is we need to start porting over like an extra set of data that we can use. So how do we want to do that for the input handler? So we can just say something like, so we want to take this input in. And we'll store it here on our input global. Oh, here's a fun thing that happened. I don't think I mentioned it. I should have mentioned it because it's fun. We surpassed 500 subscribers on YouTube. Oh, look who's live right now. It's me. Hey, Jacob. How's it going? Congrats. Thank you, Silas. Yeah, so this has impacts. This qualifies me for the first level of like the YouTube partnership program. So we're going to start getting like, I have to apply for it and it takes like a month to review and I got to like sign papers and review documents and everything. So it's not going to happen soon. It's not going to happen anytime soon. But soon we're going to have like quote unquote members on YouTube. There will be like super chats. There will be like emotes and stuff. No ads yet. Ads, you have to get 1,000 subscribers, which, you know, we're only halfway towards and it's taken, you know, a year and a half. So no timeline on when that happens. But yeah, that was fun. I will write something in the Discord about what this means in the long term. Not in the long term, but the kind of stuff I'm gonna hopefully set up to go alongside this stuff. Oh hey, developer Azra is live too. Y'all should just stop watching me and jump over there probably. Yeah, it's cool. Is it only subscribers or other stats too? You need some combination of either public watch hours or shorts views for these. I think for the 500 subscriber tier, you need like 3,000 public watch hours. We've got 3,500, so we're easy. And then for ads, you need 4,000 public watch hours. And like I said, we're at like 3,500, so that's not a meaningful limiter. We're just kind of waiting. It's going to get faster and faster. You'll snowball. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Probably not as long as we're just doing live streams like this, but I think as soon as we get, have something worth starting to make edited videos over. I'll probably want to make an edited video for like our, when we go into early access. We'll see if the thing is that we talked about this in another stream, but there's a whole series of things that need to happen before we start doing edited videos. The least of which is a Steam page, just so you have a call to action. All right, so we've got our cursor coords. This is what's coming over. I don't want to mess with this right now because this is hooked into a number of places. So what we should do just for testing purposes, we should say something like, we could say something like, mapped tile or something like that. That would just be a vector 2, huh? It'd be a vector 2i. It would be like mapped. It would be like tile mapping. And then the other one would be like tile offset or something like that. I don't know. Let's put it down here. Let's say public vector 2i. You know, we could just do this as a vector 4i, but I don't want to do that. We'll say tile mapped. And we'll say tile offset. And that'll be everything we need. So we've got like where within the tile we are, which is the offset, and we've got like the tile that's been mapped. And that should be enough to determine this little search within the space. Man, so if I'm learning anything about this setup that we want to do here, is that it might be a little premature, at least for the edit system. It might be the case that we only care about this once we are transitioning over to the play system and we start working on the simulation. I don't know. I'm hesitant to make the interface too different. So like, I'm hesitant to make the fundamental way the interface works too different between the systems. I don't love that idea. There's definitely going to need to be like, we also need to track something else, which is like the tile Z level. Because that's going to be something we're going to need to remember between frames. Diginanigans, you must have posted this forever ago, and I just missed it. You used to love PHP Storm back when you did a lot of work in PHP. You switched to VS Code when it came out because you found it more lightweight and responsive and did everything you needed. Yeah, VS Code seems pretty good. If I wasn't using Writer, I would probably be using VS Code. All right, so what do we want to do? What do we want to do? We need to figure out how this process is going to work. How this mapping process, but I guess let's start by just taking in the data we want. I probably should send this over as a vector 4, just so I only have to send one thing over. So we can say something like, we've got track camera. Could be like track tile map or something like that. Track input, mouse hover, and interaction. The other problem is that we pass in the cursor coords to a bunch of different functions. And that's because we're not setting it globally, really. We're like, yeah, this is kind of weird. How are we doing this? So when we go into the input handler and we say like, we enqueue the input, I guess we enqueue the input raw, which is why we do it like this. Coords just get kind of snuck in as part of a command. And I don't know if that's the best way to do it. But it has the benefit of we are very explicit about here's the coordinate, the input coordinate that corresponds to a command, rather than my concern is that if we just set it, because these are queues that are getting processed, we might set the input and it might not actually conform to the actual input that we had when we submitted this command. So it's not exactly great, but I guess we'll have to switch to something like that if we're going to do it this way, if we're going to like figure out where the player is clicking. And we're going to do it in the simulation with our like fake like little raycast imitator. It'd be pretty predictable if we get through this stream and we're like, hey, you know, this is the task that we were going to do today, and the thing that I learned was don't. At least not now, or not yet. But I want to understand the implications of it at least. We might switch to something else tomorrow. If it's clear that like, yeah, this is a good thing to do, but it's not going to matter until we're playing around with the game more. And right now we might as well just be locked to a particular Z level anyway, because it's easy and it works. Which is fine. That would mean we get to the simulation part sooner. And it might help me understand the integration problem better if we've actually got multiple game states that we're managing. All right, I'm going to change this function back. I think. Because we're not going to change that route right now. Oh, we're getting a raid. Battle stations. Batten down whatever the hatches. Starlight Lacuna, Stargate Blue. Starlight raid. Welcome in, Starlight and co. How's it going? How was your stream? Why is this a problem? Map? Oh, it's global. There we go. We're fiddling around here. Working on our tile block editor, as always. All right, so instead of calling this function, this is just going to be a parallel track that we run with the awkward... Well, I guess we run it every frame because it runs in process. Yeah, we're just going to run this as a parallel process here just so we don't have to worry about its implications here. We're going to only use static layer 0 for this. So we're going to say... And this is going to be the basis of our new inputs to local. This is a get global mouse position. Stream was great. You were working on an open source Godot game. You had a lot of fun and was very productive. An open source Godot game, you say? That's cool. That's very cool. It feels brave to do that. How's my game going? My game's going pretty good. We've got a few... We're mainly working on this tool set to build our isometric 3D ships. That tool is pretty mature. So we can make these big 3D areas. We can fill them in. I gotta change the workflow there because that's not like the intended workflow eventually. So you can hollow them back out. It's kind of silly that it's like subtractive like this. We can demarcate them. So we're getting pretty close to what I would say is done for now for this tool. And what we need to do, so there's an auto tiler, there's a cutaway system. There's this whole thing for building out these spaces. Make some doors. We really need to move on to like the actual simulation, you know? It's really cool. Thank you. What kind of game are you working on? Yeah, it's been a lot of work getting even just the auto tiler working consistently. And yeah, we've been working on how to have a different input method, because right now it's we hard code basically the vertical Z level. So right now I can only interact with the topmost layer, and then if I scroll in, now I can interact with the second layer. Scroll in third, you know, fourth, fifth, sixth. Well, we only go down to here. But I want to switch to kind of something that's more of like a raycast, so that like I can select the walls of this block. Because right now I really can't. So that's kind of what we've been looking at doing. A bit hesitant to do it because it's definitely complicated. And I'm not sure it totally applies to this build mode, because in this build mode, we're building an empty space, and it's kind of hard to map into empty space where you are. It's a lot easier if you hard code the Z level like we're doing right now. So I don't know. But yeah, we're on our way. We don't have too many. I just decided to dive into these tasks. We haven't even started the resizable block buffer. Maybe that will work on soon. That kind of goes along with these ones, the saving and loading, because before we save and load, we kind of want to resize. So we might work on this next, if we decide the raycast should be put on hold. I really want to do this though, but there's some problems. You're working on a small arcadey game. Player defends against waves of enemies, basically. No, that sounds cool. Love a good wave, like horde mode kind of game where you're defending against waves. That's fun. Saving and loading will make testing so much easier. Yeah, it should be good. It should be good. But yeah, we're kind of trying to knock out the rest of the, I would say, the core functionality that we need for this tile block editor before we can move on to the next thing, which is like, you've saved out a ship, you're leaving edit mode and you're in play mode. It's like, okay, well now the ship needs to do all sorts of stuff. Now it needs to, like, you know, simulate oxygen and power and provide pathfinding for characters running around in it. And like doors need to be able to open and close and all this stuff. So we're trying to get finished with at least the initial set of features for our editor, so we can actually get down to the game part. And we want to do that soon. So we're doing okay. There's a few things that we really need to finish, like the undo redo, which is kind of just going to be hitching a ride on the back of the save and load. So yeah, save and load is probably the only thing we need remaining. Auto tile invalid blocks would be pretty good. We need like the source engine, like magenta, like invalid texture or something. Not invalid, but you know. We need something like that too soon. It'd be wild to tally up how much time has been spent drawing test rooms. Yeah, let's not do that. Especially because all the test rooms look basically identical. All right, well, this stream I said I was working on the input thing, so let's keep working on that at least for a little while. Let's at least start getting this data into here. I'm tempted to combine these into one piece of data instead of passing them around as two separate vector 2s. But yeah, this input system has implications for a lot of things. So what can we do? We can say something like input handler. We can say something like just say something like tile mapping. And I kind of want to pass it as a single thing, but we could pass it as two things. Actually, we're just going to say going to say local to map. So we pass in the local to map because we want that. And then what we want to do is we want to pass in the local coords minus map to local. That gives us the offset. Now let's go to the input handler. Make a function down here. Call it tile map and tile offset because that's what we called it elsewhere. It's a void. We should do them. Well, we should match the game state. There's some game states where we're probably not going to do this, but in the edit mode, we definitely are. All right, how are we going to process this? Oh, we don't need to do it like this. So here we've got like game.trackCamera. I think this just instantly records something. I don't even think it queues anything up. Track camera, input.camera coords equals coords. Yeah, I guess we want something like this. I guess we don't need to queue it and queue it and dequeue it. We want to provide that information much more rapidly. So instead of that, we can just say game.map file mapping. Lurk, you gotta go take care of some chores. No worries. Thank you. Thank you for the raid. Take it easy, Starlight. Yeah, your text-to-speech project sounds pretty crazy, Nix. Yeah, whatever. I was like, I could compress this into a single vector 4. And I'm like, it's less descriptive that way. Might as well just do it this way. All right, this isn't going to do anything. This is just going to give us some data to work with as we're messing around with this system, this alternative system. You okay? Do I need to rebuild? I probably need to rebuild. Sometimes I need to just reload the whole script, which is kind of weird. Close. And then there's that script. UI. Input handler. Yeah, funny. You just have to reload the script file. Why is it not green? Oh, must be a vector 2i. It has to be a vector 2i. There we go. Oh, that's cool. You're making like a kind of almost like a smart home. You're making a Jarvis. It's pretty cool. All right, so that's something. All right, what else can we do without like totally messing everything up? How else can we explore this opportunity, this alternative input system without just ruining everything we have? Above 1122. Thank you for the follow. We appreciate that. Hey, what's up? Let's give that shout out to Starlight Lacuna for that raid earlier. Hey, Above. We're working on Digital Iliad, which is an isometric 3D take on FTL Faster Than Light. So it's kind of like a starship management game. And we're working on a big tile editor tool that we use to build these 3D ships and then render them in 2D as if they're, well, as isometric tile sets. I did say I was going to work on the resizable block buffer, so maybe that's what we should pivot to. Jacob, you got to run for work. No worries. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you're doing well. So for the resizable block buffer stuff, we support that. I added support for that from a component standpoint. So like a buffer component can be resized. So we can do that. The thing is, we need to understand what that means. How are we currently positioning the tile maps? They should be positioned centrally, right? Yeah, so their origin is the center of the screen, more or less. I don't love that this one has a... Oh, we don't use this one, do we? So this was the elastic. This one's also a grid. What I want to do is I want to be able to resize these buffers. But maybe that doesn't affect the tile maps. Maybe that, I mean, the tile maps are still just going to be centered. Let's just make sure I'm getting... Excuse me. Just make sure I'm getting what I want here. So here, let's just add this temporarily. Oh, this isn't gonna print when I want it to. Might as well just do it here. Okay, I don't like whatever this song is. Whatever's going on here. Oh man, another raid? Findall. Coming in. Hey Findall. Hello raiders. Red alert. You jumped in right during an ad. Hey Findall. How's it going? Happy Tuesday. How was the stream? Let me give you that follow. I just shouted someone out. Let me see if I can do that again. No, I got it. All right. Thank you thank you for the raid. You're having a good stream. You got lots done. Nice. What kind of stuff are you working on? Hey, Kilted Ninja, BitGamey. Welcome to Digital Iliad here. Hey, Dukasoft. I'm gonna give it one more minute because we're going through ads, and then we'll talk about what we do here. How we're hanging. You don't think you've been here before? No, I don't think so. You're doing web dev in Blazor. Oh, cool. We got a lot of web devs here in the community. Not me. Closest I get to web dev is AppScript in Google Workspace. Which I guess that's some kind of web dev, you know. You don't really do game dev. You're more of a professional stuff kind of guy. Nice, nice. We'll ignore the implication that game dev is unprofessional. No, that's actually how we want to take it here. I have a day job. So in my part-time here, 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday, we work on Digital Iliad, which is like an isometric 3D version of FTL Faster Than Light. If people are not familiar with FTL Faster Than Light, we'll show a little bit of it. So FTL Faster Than Light, classic game about starship management. Top-down 2D, great game. Recently, very lovingly imitated by Void War, which just came out. But we're taking this idea of like, you got a starship, you got your crew, you got your systems, you got adversarial ships. We're making it a little bit more spatial, a little more 3D, a little bit more priority on positioning. This is kind of like maybe a little visual style guide of what the kind of look we're going for. We've spent almost all of our time working on a tile block editor tool here, which I can show a little bit. No, I get it. It's cool. It's cool, Thindall. So here here's like a top level. So this combines like a block editor with an auto tiler and a cutaway system. So let's define like 5 or 6 floors like this. Then what we can do is we can fill the space up. We've also got a compartmentalization system, like using like a simple flood fill algorithm. So we've got this cube. We can kind of cut into this cube at different Z levels. So this is like our block of clay or whatever, right? This is our stone that we're working from. So what we can do, go down here, we can start to hollow it out. Oh, I forgot the layer at the top. Get that. There's also this cutaway system that can tell where the rooms are. So now that I've provided, you know, when the room is, when it's just blocks, we default to this kind of a cutaway system. But as soon as the system detects a room, it switches to something like this. If we start to compartmentalize the space further, we get some cool stuff. So now it shows us specific rooms. It gives us some nice little half wall cuts, including in a given room. There's like a pillar or something. Yeah, so this is the kind of stuff we do. We can select things. So I could select all of this, copy it. Now I've selected a random chunk. So we got a pretty nice fleshed out, you know, editor tool here. Throw that away. Grab it again. Got some doors. We can even auto tile the doors. So that single door becomes a double door. This door can become a double door and then a triple door. Not knowing what you're talking about, voxels. We don't use that word here. These aren't voxels because they're not the 3D equivalent of a pixel, you know? Like we're not rendering these, right? The complicated thing that we're doing is the game space is in 3D, right? But the way we're rendering this is just a tile set. These are tile maps. Like we're rendering 2D sprites. So a lot of what our auto tiler does is it interprets this 3D space and says, okay, how do we draw this in 2D? And that's how we get the nice outlining that we have, the little black outlines on the edge of everything. That's how we get the change in color tone. So the system can tell interior walls and floors, which get that dark gray color, versus light gray walls and floors, which are like interior compartments, versus the mid-tone gray, which is the exterior. We have a camera rotation system. It doesn't work very well. So if I rotate 90 degrees, it crashes. But eventually we'll fix that and we'll be able to rotate the camera and redraw the whole thing. We had it working before and then we messed it up. So we got to fix it. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'm working on. I appreciate you raiding in here, especially when you're not normally in the game dev stuff. We're doing all of this in Godot. That's our engine of choice here. But yeah, really appreciate you and your raiders coming in, hanging out. If you got a raid and run, no worries. Today we've been thinking about how we approximate a kind of like a raycast input system. You're here for a bit? Oh, nice, nice, nice. We will be too. So the problem I'm trying to address right now is like we've got this, so we got our block thing, right? Problem right now is we're basically hard coding what Z level we're working in. So that's what I'm using the scroll wheel for, is like moving me up and down different layers. I kind of want to switch to like a raycast system. So like this highlight shows me what tile I'm on. I would like to be able to select one of these sidewall pieces by just mousing over it, but I can't do that because our Z level is locked in, right? We hard code it and we move between them, and I don't love that. So we've been looking at ways to switch to like basically faking a raycast through the system, through the 3D world. And that's kind of what we've been working on. The lesson of today has been maybe don't. You just don't know how anything works? That's okay, me either. You're in good company. So yeah, it's a little hard. So we're thinking about how to get that system, getting a system like that working. And so kind of what I want to think about now is the kind of the other part of this, or another part of this, which is resizing the block buffer to be the size to only take up the space that it needs to take up. So how are we going to do that? Well, we'll probably use this used bounds metric, which we calculate the bounds that are actually being used. So like you have this big volume, right? We're only using part of the volume for the construction, for the constructed space. So eventually, I would like to resize that volume because this is densely packed. What we're essentially we're using a big buffer, big three-dimensional buffer to hold all of the data of each of the blocks or voxels, which I will give you just this one time. We'll call it a voxel. But yeah, we need to be able to reduce the data structure that we are using to store those based on the actual space that needs to be used. So I'm thinking about how and when we want to do that. The smart thing would be to just do it at the end when we're about to save something. So that's probably when we'll do it, is when we are done editing and we just save it out. But part of the resizable thing we were talking about was we might want to move it, right? Here's the other thing I want to do. We might want to move the boundary that's holding the thing. So if I go all the way to the edge here, bam, I'm actually at the edge. You can see because it stops rendering the thing. So this is like the minimum, somewhere around here is the minimum point. Yeah, so this is the minimum point. Ooh, it doesn't render correctly here. That's fascinating. What's going on with that? Oh, there's something wrong with the auto tiler here in the back corner. Okay, so it works then. If I erase that, what's going on here? So it works when I put something in there, but we don't have this problem on the other side. That is the X layer. Okay. Time to go find why the X layer or the X face is behaving differently than the right face. It's being sneaky. Yeah. Yeah, our auto tiler kind of splits things up. So like so we have this block. This is like our 3D block. It consists of like an upper portion and a lower portion. So here's like the lower portion, which corresponds to, you know, one of these floor pieces. It has an upper portion, which is like a wall piece or something. And so a single 3D block is actually getting rendered as like 6 different tiles. So it has like the X facing tiles, it has the Y facing tiles, it has a couple Z facing tiles. And it's got upper and lower sections. Obviously, we're like culling most of these most of the time. But this one, the lower X-facing tile is not rendering correctly in that case where it's back at the negative, when it's at the minimum coordinate of the bounding box. So let's dive into the auto tiler. And all we got to do here, let's actually do a split. Because what we need to do is we need to find the difference. We need to spot the difference between the X cell, what we call the deck X cell for the floor, then which we call a deck, as opposed to a bulk. So we use nautical terms here. So we've got X on the left and Y on the right. So the Y is behaving correctly, but the X is not. So time to play the game, spot the difference. And what's weird is it's not rendering the whole thing. So I actually think the problem is up here somewhere. Because it's actually just skipping the whole tile, which is suspicious. Why would you be skipping the whole tile? Oh, you know what would have been interesting if I had checked to see if the selection overlay was still worked. All right, so far this all looks fine. So why else might you not want to draw? So there might be a problem in the hull calculator and the thing that determines like what the hull types are, because that's the only thing. So this is the only time we return default, and these are correct. QXYZ plus vector 3i dot y. Let me see if the cutaway system might be making a problem here for us. So we could say if cutaway dot blah blah blah. Very strange what we got going on here. All right, let's go up to the whole thing. We can get rid of this. So we'll say derive deck layer data, because I think the problem might be coming from here actually. So for each Z level, we go through each area. So we go through each 2D area for the 3D volume. We start at the minimum point with Z equals area. We end at the maximum point with Z equals area. We have some problem at the minimum point. Strange. You're gonna split, Silas? You haven't had much sleep last couple days? No worries. Thanks for hanging out. Take it easy. Get some rest. All right, X block, Y block. We're trying to spot a difference between the way we treat the X block and the Y block. Trying to understand why we would see a problem there for one but not the other. This is going to be some weird, super obscure problem here. I don't see anything obviously causing this problem. But it's nice to have a bug to find. Yeah, fascinating. What's it do at the maximum? Do we have anything weird happening at the maximum? No. Maximum seems fine. Okay, but the minimum... Anyway, my point was... The point that I was trying to make before I got deeply distracted was, let's say we start building. Let's say we start building something, but for whatever reason we're at the maximum, right? Well, we don't want to just hit the end. That's maybe indicative of a problem here. The fact that this is being cut away. So well, let's say we hit the edge. Well, that's annoying. If there's room on this side, then it should just move. It should just move at least the origin of the bounding box so that it can bring the minimum up and push the maximum out so we can keep building on this side. So I want it to be flexible. So that's not exactly the same as resizing it, but it's pretty close in my mind. Because you can think of it as moving the whole thing, or you could think of it as bringing, you could think of moving the whole thing, or you could think of making it bigger on one end and smaller on the other, right? It depends on how you want to think about the movement. Doesn't really matter, but there might be some implementation details, Oh, is this going to work now that it's not empty? Nope. Okay. Fascinating. I wonder what's causing that. What's really weird is if I place this down, it's got that missing face. If I put a block here, it comes back. Fascinating. That's dumb. How do I want to figure that out? Oh, I guess I should see if that affects the walls too, or if it's just a floor. That seems like a reasonable thing to check. So we'll go way over here to the edge, find the edge. Now let's get one of the wall pieces out. Oh. That's strange. It's affecting the mask. So it's affecting the mask and it's affecting the floor, but it's not affecting the wall. So it is a problem isolated to the X face of the lower deck. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's interesting that it's when this mode, it still happens to draw that. It just doesn't mask it correctly. Unless I put something here. Oh, and in which case it still doesn't mask it correctly. Fascinating. If I erase this. No? What if I do this? No? Okay. Is it really a bug that only affects the lower deck of just that one coordinate? Yep. Yep, it is. And it only affects one side of it. That is crazy. And it draws it successfully if there's a wall above it, but it doesn't mask correctly. This is crazy. What is this bug? It's like obviously not a big deal, but it's it kind of drives me crazy that it might only affect one side. Oh, wait, is that not the X face? Is that the Y face? No, that's the X face. I get it confused the way I've named. I don't know if the way I've named it is the best. Where I consider it the X face if the normal of the face is in line with the X axis. That's what I consider the X face, which is why the right face here. Because in Godot, X goes this, well, in our 2D diamond down arrangement, X goes this way, Y goes this way. with positive numbers being towards the screen, as in down. The enemy's gate is down. That's our Godot joke, right? All right, so how in the world are we doing this in such a way that it only affects one side of one piece? I'm a little suspicious of the cutaway system, but that doesn't make sense because the cutaway doesn't think about faces, it only thinks about blocks. So it doesn't totally make sense that that would be the thing. All right, we're going to look for this bug for a few more minutes. And then I'll probably call it there. The timer music. Yeah, I know. It's like, what are you doing? There's certain sounds you shouldn't put in a song, you know? Sirens. My alarm clock. Yeah, it's very rude to have that in there. Yeah, what could possibly be treating that layer differently? Only that layer. What touches the tiles system? Only the tile system touches these tiles. So it's somewhere in here. We've got something weird going on. This is very strange. Oh, what I should also look, I should check real quick if this affects more Z levels or just the top Z level. Because if it only impacts the true minimum coordinate of the entire volume, that'd be interesting. So here we are. So what if I go one level down? Oh. Okay, it only affects the topmost. Curious. Curiouser and curiouser. I don't this is the part that really bothers me is this, how it kicks back in if I put another piece here. Oh, but it doesn't fix the mask though. Oh, and it goes away again if I do this. What? Like what? Oh, but the selection shows up. What's up with that? So the hover doesn't show, but a selection shows. There's some hint here about it. There's some hint about what's happening here. Sorry, I'm sure this is like literally the most boring bug I could possibly be searching for. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a problem on that side. All right. So it's not affecting this call, the create tile map cells call, because the deck Z cell is writing, and so is the deck Y cell. So these are being written correctly. For key in halls.keys. It is possible that the hull is not registering this correctly. That's kind of what I'm presume must be happening. But what's crazy, actually, no, maybe that's not what's happening because it is. Yeah, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. Because it is working for things like the selection layer. So the selection layer will work, but not the hover. What in the world? This might just be a mystery. This might just remain a mystery for now. Hopefully it becomes more obvious what's happening here, possibly as a result of us making these block buffers more flexible. And also because they're more flexible, we should almost never need to draw something at the minimum point. Oh yeah, it only affects the minimum Z level. Right. That's also a part of this that's curious. So how are we iterating through this would be, I guess, my question. So area equals 0, area is less than whole levels, area plus plus. Block buffer dot get index. Block buffer dot AABB dot minimum with Z equals area. For I equals start. I is less than end. Area equals 0. I hope there isn't a... There might be a relative position thing happening here. I hope not. Absolute minus game.view.center. Yeah, there might be a relative view thing going on here. It seems unlikely, though. It seems like that would affect one particular face. Man, I hate these bugs. I hate these kind of bugs. I think I'm going to say something like this. If polls... Try get value. Oh, well, we know... What we can do is we can say if key.xyz is equal to... vector 3i dot 0. I don't know. Just gonna see if this ever occurs. Because 0 is the minimum. It's the origin. All right, so let's go up here. It should crash as soon as I get here. Okay, so we got here. Atlas block. Yeah. Edge tiles, true. Key, 0, 0, 0, 0. Mask null. Now let's what? Let's step forward. Step over. Oh, I didn't want to step over. I wanted to step into. Let's rerun. I want to figure out where this problem is. All right, so we found the edge here. Let's just keep going until we find this edge. There we go. So we're going to step into this. So that's not true. Okay, maybe I don't understand how this works. Step over. Okay, maybe I don't. Oh, I closed the whole system. Okay, well, we are getting that. So 0, 0, 0. Let me look at the tile layers. Someone show me a tile layer. System, tile system. Tile.layers. Deck X is 0. Okay, so we got it. Problem is, we must have hit one of the early return problems. Or maybe the tile is being left as default somehow. Is that possible? Here. We can actually just ask if key is equal to vector 4i.0. We can say calls try get value key X. I want to evaluate the statement inside this. No, maybe not this one. Let's just do this. See this. It's kind of a weird problem to find. Key 0, 0, 0, holes, count 3. Yeah, you got 0, 0, 0, 0, and 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 2. That's right. Well, the thing, here's the thing. So this will be false. So this will necessarily be false. So this and doesn't mean anything at all. Is it possible we're maybe overwriting the tile data somehow? Here, we'll do one more check to make sure we're not losing our minds. Otherwise, we're just going to return default. All right. So yeah, we're getting weird behavior at the minimum. Oh. Okay. Interesting. So we are processing this, because if we weren't, we would hit this. So how could we be processing this and yet we're seeing nothing? Time to look at the source ID, I guess. Well, I'm annoyed by this bug, but I'm kind of glad it came up because I wasn't sure what else to do for that specific input remapping thing we're talking about. All right, is it possible that these chords are mismatched here? No, that's pretty normal. There isn't anything weird about this. That would explain it. Okay. So the source ID is fine. What's interesting is we just hit this. When we do the hovering overlay thing, we will just hit this, the if not edge tiles, and then we'll just return the tile with this key. And this just doesn't work. Just curious. It's weird that it works for the selection and nothing else. I think we're gonna say this. All right, so what's all the data we got here? Atlas chord 0, 0. Key. Cutaways has nothing in it. All outer. We step over here. What's happening? All right, is it possible that this is happening later? Or I think we might be over... I don't know what we could be doing here. It's possible we could be overwriting this thing. You know what would be worth doing is trying to change the minimum point of the bounding box to like a number other than 0. Like what if we try to change it? What if it became negative something? Would this problem still... Would we still see this problem? Oh well. That might be a problem for another day. Just frustrating. We weren't able to find this. I wanted to see what happens here. Here we can say actually we can just throw a whole new thing. Just throw exception is fine. I want to go through each because we're doing this a number of times, or we're doing this at least twice, and I want to see what the second time it looks like. Because we're doing the basic tile and we're also doing an overlay. I'm curious about the overlay. Edge tile true, mask is null. So what if we resume? We should hit this again, right? Immediately? Why didn't we hit it again? We should hit this multiple times. Here, we're going to stop doing it like this. We're going to say I want to know I don't need to know the source ID. What I would like to know is mask. Stop telling me about the source ID. Maybe the game's trying to tell me that there's something wrong here. Huh? Oh, there we go. Okay, well, so we're calling both. The problem is not with setting up the tile data. It's either being lost, which is possible. It's possible it's not making it to the tile map somehow. Very weird, very weird. What's even weirder is that it'll show if I put a selection down. Or it did. Oh, let me plant the block first. This is what makes me crazy. So block select. Where do we do the counting? Here's something that I think might be the problem. If tile is equal to default continue, I think that's it. That is it. That's the source of the bug. That's the problem. Because under those circumstances, that's what's happening. I'm pretty sure. Which is great because we're running out of time. That's got to be, this is like literally the only thing it could be is this line. If tile is equal to default. Continue. So we need to change what the default tile is, looks like. Because the problem is the position is 0, 0. The level is 0. The layer is 0. It's all 0. The easiest thing to do would probably just to be make these. Well, position can't be that. Level. I can make level and layer arguably 0. We could say layer equals -1. That's nonsense. That might break things, but let's see if that fixes it for us. It might break a lot of things. Oh, seemingly not. Okay. Let's see if it fixes the problem. That's true. I usually don't like the default value for a struct to be valid for exactly this reason. Oh. Still problem. Still the problem. Well, I'm convinced I know where the error is. I'm not convinced how to fix it, though. Oh, no, because the layer is being set as 0. What's the best way to do this? Oh, it needs to be something like this. It needs to be like source ID equals -1. If I do that, are we good? Gotta run. Thanks for the stream. No worries. Thank you, Rihanna Journey. We'll be wrapping up soon, too. I'm out of time, but I really want to fix this bug. I think if we set the source ID to be -1 by default, I think that changes the default value for us. And I think that fixes the bug. Nope. Okay, maybe I don't understand what the default value for... I mean, or I could just be wrong. I could also just be wrong. But that's the only thing that makes sense to me. What's crazy is we don't have the problem here. Maybe there's something else happening. Maybe I can't redefine. Maybe we need to do the thing here. Maybe we need to do this. So we've got our tile dot layers. Maybe we just need to change these. Oh, I can't change these. I use these, don't I? I use these to do things. If I change this, we're going to be in a ton of trouble. Watch this fail pretty horribly. Oh, no. Okay, I was convinced that would fail horribly. This might work though, because this will prevent us from having the default problem. All right, we fixed it. We fixed it. Oh, we might have. What was going on there? Oh, I think that was just the flood fill taking 6 years to run. Okay, cool. Yeah, all we did is we just changed deck X to not be layer 0. It's layer 1. We'll leave layer 0 undefined. That should work for now. We could say null equals 0. That's okay, because this isn't a flag. If this was a flag, we wouldn't be able to do that. Like if it was a bit flag. Alright, cool. Stupid default values messing us up, but we figured out one of the more possibly obscure bugs here. I'm gonna wrap it up there. I'm running quite late. We figured out the bug. I think the lesson we learned about changing the input is maybe don't for now. So I think we're going to put that back on the back burner here. I think I'm going to take raycast cursor input. I think we're going to move that to be on hold. I'm going to put that on hold here. I think that was the lesson of the day. We will still do the resizable block buffer thing. This is important, and I think we're going to dig into these things tomorrow. Maybe we'll do the auto tile invalid blocks thing. We'll make like an invalid stand-in block, which would be good. And then we can, this week, move into saving and loading, which is the most important thing. And then we can figure out the raycast cursor input thing later. Because, yeah, it would be nice. But I think it makes less sense when we're only in editor mode. I think once we have play mode, it makes a lot more sense to allow for that sort of thing. Yeah, thanks, Nix. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks again to Thindle and Starlight Lacuna for the raids. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.